Boozhoo.
Ani.
Welcome to N-Weighing, our sound podcast. This is our podcast about raising children in Anishinaabemowin as second language learners.
I'm Mshkogaabwid, and this is my husband.
Ozaawaa Giizhigo Ginew.
Here we will be talking about stories, challenges, triumphs, and tips as we share our experiences about our household of 5. Beat it again.
Okay. Pass my waist.
Boozhoo.
Boozhoo.
Ginew.
Anishinaabeg. Ozaawaa Giizhigo Ginew Indigo Ginew and Ginew Michigan Dodem. Anishinaabeg. So, Chi-Miigwech, Shaganashi Winakazian. So Chi-Miigwech is my English name. And yeah, I'll let Emmeline introduce herself.
Ani. Kinawea Mshkogaabwid Indijnakaz. Makoendo dem. Gaganashkodiak and Demendagos. Dashkanzi being a donjiba. Mshkogaabwid means strong standing woman and bear clan, so yeah, there's a lot of energy there, and yeah, I just think that being a mother is like what I was brought here to do. So in saying that,
first episode, and we're going to talk about the challenges of parenting, and because we're both learners, we're going to talk about, as we go through the podcast, we're going to talk about our challenges of being learners as well, and tips that you can use and stuff like that.
I started learning Anishinaabemowin about, it's 2021 now, so I guess technically 8 years ago. Almost 8 years ago, I started my learning journey. Became a mom 4 years ago. And I wasn't very high proficiency at all when I was pregnant, or when I became pregnant. So having a partner who speaks at a pretty proficient level has been super helpful, but for sure, usually most people have had more exposure, or I don't want to say most people, but like I think it's a new journey. It's a new way of pioneering, because we don't know what the result is going to be, what the outcome is going to be, other than us trying as hard as we can. So yeah, it's kind of like a new journey for everybody, being a second language learner and teaching your children a language while speaking at the same time and learning at the same time. So I don't know, is there anything you want to add to that?
So I'll just, I guess, add that I started learning seriously in 2007, and so since then I've gone through different programs and kind of tried to learn the language as much as I can. And I knew that before I had kids, that I wanted to be able to pass the language on. So even, I don't know, as a learner, I don't think you ever feel like you're a fluent speaker or very proficient. But with our kids, we were able to stay in the language with them all day. So sometimes that you have to kind of be creative in how you're trying to relay a message to them. Sometimes, like, I don't know how to say something to them, so I'll have to figure out how to say it in the language, including like how I kind of, like, if I don't know a certain grammar pattern, I have to kind of talk around that. So yeah, so this podcast, this first one, I think we're going to talk about raising children in the language and kind of what that looks like, and how we're doing with that. We have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So
how would you describe the spirit of each of our kids, if you wanted to just sum it up quickly? Our 3-year-old is
like their character.
Yeah, so like as we move forward, I kind of want to paint a picture of our household.
Our daughter, like she's really communicating now verbally and emotionally, and she, to other people that she doesn't know, she's very shy, so she doesn't really talk to new people that she's met. She's not that type of person to just go up to someone and start talking, but for us she's very communicative, and she right now, because like our family doesn't speak Anishinaabemowin, so she gets the language from us. So she gets English from our family, and so right now she's kind of speaking 50-50 English and Anishinaabemowin. But she understands, like when I talk to her in the language, she understands everything I'm saying. Yeah. And her son, he's 1, and I think he's moving up in his communication. I think because he has an older sibling that is talking all the time, so his ability to communicate is moving up quicker than I think she was at his age.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Our daughter is a very silly spirit. She's I would say like a type A personality. She likes things a certain way. She likes to do things that are productive and likes things organized in a certain fashion, and loves to move like any other kid, loves to run and jump and play, and has a really good sense of humor. We're really learning that, practicing that laughter. And then our son, I don't want to go here, but he's a typical Sag. He's a typical Sagittarius. He's just motoring, ready to go, very wild, free spirit, very interested in what adults are doing, loves cooking, loves to watch what's going on in the kitchen, and very good at communicating even though he is not yet, and verbally. He's just beginning to say things like achoo, and like when we go hush or shh, he'll put his finger up and say shh. He's very good at communicating when there's things going on, when the coffee machine is done, if the timer on the oven is done, those kinds of things. And very serious, very contemplative at the same time. So that's just kind of like to paint a picture of kind of the energy going on in the household, just moving forward.
Because we're both learners, we don't have all of the words that we want to express, and sometimes it's not until you're in the situation of like someone spills milk on the carpet or something, and you're trying to tell them the reason why you shouldn't do that or what happened, and you don't have all the words to express, or you're playing Legos with them and they're trying to build something and you don't have all the words to like say attach it or turn it over or things like that. So that's one of the things, is kind of as a learner, and we're trying to speak to our children, we don't always have the words in that moment, and you either find another way to say it, or we just don't say it. We just don't break into English. Was there anything else you wanted to?
Well, first and foremost, any immersion setting comes headaches, which thankfully I know just from learning a language previous to Anishinaabemowin. I'm not saying that everybody should learn another language before they learn Anishinaabemowin or their own language, but for me personally, it would have been way harder because I wouldn't have been able to relate or understand certain concepts of language learning, and separate that from my emotional stuff that comes along with learning your own language, especially Anishinaabemowin and the way it was taken. So for me, learning German before learning Anishinaabemowin was so helpful to know that, like, the headaches are normal, the frustration and the blockage in your head after a certain point is normal. Getting to a certain point in a sentence, or someone else speaking to a certain point, and then you kind of losing all meaning after that, like holding on to it for so long and then losing it all out of fatigue. Those are all just like normal parts of immersion, I think. And thankfully, like, learning that I could only go so far in German before learning grammar, and then having that grammar piece to add into socializing and using it in a practical way, like, all together really helped me when I had to transfer that over into Anishinaabemowin, because there was such an emotional part to that I had to carry along with it. So in regards to teaching my kids, put the headaches and the frustration aside, and the grammar part aside. I just never imagined myself, up until a couple of years ago, parenting in a different language, and so my brain does not yet think completely Anishinaabe, like, when I'm trying to speak Anishinaabemowin, and parent at the same time, because my parenting brain is all in English and my Anishinaabemowin is all in my heart, and it is so hard to go back and forth all the time. It's not just sometimes I don't have the words, it's sometimes I am so tired from going back and forth between what is logical and what is feeling, and this concept of parenthood in itself. So that has been challenging. When you get into a heated moment with your family, tension arises and the feelings are there. Anger, frustration, your patience is gone. You're trying to control the situation or make the best of it, and when you're that frustrated, you're not in a place to kind of find those words either. And that is a really real thing, because we all know being a parent is like super, there are times where it really pushes you to your limits, right? So I would also say that. Did I stir up anything while I was talking that you can think of? Because I could probably think of a couple more, but I don't really want to focus too much more on it.
Just kind of what you're saying is that, like, when you're in moments of, like, maybe you're frustrated with your children or your husband or your wife or your partner, like, things just happen, and you're not necessarily in a place to translate when it's your second language. And I think, like, I can only reference movies and stuff like that when you see, like, a Spanish speaker or something yelling at someone and they're yelling in Spanish.
That's such a good example, yeah. Especially because there's so much more driven behind your first language, right?
Yeah, so that was, like, they might be able to speak broken English, but because they're angry or whatever, then they're yelling in Spanish. So I can see that, how that can happen in using Anishinaabemowin too, and trying to.
And not just frustration. I think, like, there's moments of shock or moments of awe or moments of surprise where you don't even know how you would react in English as a parent, and then have to be like, oh God, I don't even know how I feel about this in the moment presently in my English mind, because that's how we feel as parents, you know, in regular moments of first milestones or whatever. And then how do I translate this right now, especially because it's such a monumental moment? Like, quickly, like, there's also those times too, I think.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of, like, sometimes I want to react in English, and I want to, like, say things, like, and just be silly with, like, you just want to be silly with your kids, and you hear all these English expressions that are in your head, and you want to say them, or like the expressions from just being from the res, like saying, "Oh, that's deadly," or "skoden." Like, I can't really say those things to them, and I would say our daughter's probably a little behind in English, and sometimes I know that if we only spoke English to her, like how well
she'd be flying.
Yeah, like how well of a speaker of English she would be.
Yeah, it would be crazy. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I have to sit back and think. Like, another thought that I always have is like, oh, she's probably behind in both languages because I can't give her everything in Anishinaabemowin. But then I have to sit back and think, well, look at how much she does know in Anishinaabemowin. Like, she knows a lot of words, and she understands pretty much everything that I say to her. It's just getting her exposure to other speakers and stuff. That's the hard part. But yeah, just those English expressions, or being in the moment, or trying to be funny, or playing around and being excited, and
I think she'll get there. Like, I think so for second language, like bilingual children, it usually takes them longer to get as far as monolingual children because they have two. But by the time that they get there, I think we've talked about this before, but it's like exponential. So by the time they come around to the same spot, they've gone twice the length. So they know quadruple the amount, right? So when they come into other places like music, math, spatial, empathy, even feelings, emotional, whatever, their brain just works in different ways. Art, music, because they already have like done that work on their board, on their in their brain, on their little panel there. So I know that she'll get there with English, and that's taken me a while to realize and to sit back and be like, it's okay, she'll get there. There's no need to worry about the English part. The Anishinaabemowin part is tough because we both know that, like, if we were fluent speakers, she'd be again flying in Anishinaabemowin. But for me, as a mother, as a Giizhigo, I have to tell myself that, like, and now this is pretty general to this whole situation, but I have to tell myself that, like, if for whatever reason she is not fluent, or I don't get her, like, it doesn't meet the expectations that I set out or whatever, like, one, it's not about me, and two, I'm sure she'll forgive me for trying as hard as I did, like, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. Just trying everything I can to move forward in my learning and to get further for her. And I think it's working, actually. I do. Currently, I forgot to mention, I'm in school. I'm taking early childhood education in Anishinaabemowin. So it's trying to be an Indigenous-led based program about early childhood education, with also an immersion component. So since then, that started in January. It's now March. I've noticed an increase. But I'll admit, I do use English a little bit in the home, just when I cannot get the message clear. If it's about something serious like safety, then I'll bring it in. But Monty in Ozaawaa, he has not spoken one word of English since the day they were both born. So I just have to let everyone know that, because I wish that was my goal, and I had to break here and there, but I have to give it to him. So I'll just let you in on that secret.
I guess what I'll add to that too is that we speak English to each other. We will speak in the language to each other part of the time, but I think when we're talking to each other, we speak mostly in English, and that.
There was a time where we tried only speaking in the language, and I said, look, for my mental health, I just need to be able to speak to my partner in English when I need to about just regular day stuff, especially instructions and stuff. But originally the plan was like completely Anishinaabemowin household. But it's just really hard because you get trapped in your own head when you can't express what you need to say. So, sorry to interrupt again.
And then for me, we just recently introduced her, like, within this past year of being in a pandemic, because we're with them 24/7. We kind of introduced her to more English movies and TV shows. So she does get that. She does get English from that too, and once in a while, she will put on like a playlist on YouTube of Anishinaabemowin only videos that are out there. There's not a whole lot of diversity out there, but there are some kind of directed at kids that she's able to watch, although she's kind of bored of them because there's no new ones that are created, and there's only a limited amount of content that's out there.
And they're not long, right? Because it's so much work to do with no funding and on your own and for our own. Most Anishinaabemowin is like self-funded by people who care because they're just trying to get the content out there. So it's usually not that long. It's not a full-length movie like Disney. So it's not like I can sit her down in a 60-minute Anishinaabemowin video that's going to keep her attention like, Disney Frozen would, right? So that's also a challenge, right?
Yeah. So, and the other thing is I'll try and put on like other language things, so French or Spanish or just another language, and it'll be a cartoon of something, and it'll keep her attention, but it's in another language. Like the latest thing she's into is like Paw Patrol, and so I'll find a French version of Paw Patrol on YouTube, and I'll play that for her, and she'll just watch the show, and it'll all be in French, just so that she's getting another language other than English.
Yeah, and I should really be, diving back into German and reintroducing that, because I did a lot of that when she was young. And then the toddlerhood happened, then another baby happened, and you just kind of forget. So I know we're also interested in learning sign language together, Monty and I, and perhaps someone else, one of our friends. So that could be something that we also incorporate into the family. I think would be really good. I just think that the more exposure to language learning, the more support and increase in learning for the existing languages that you've already acquired. So yeah, I should really get back on that. Ich vergesse mein Deutsch Sprache.
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that we do is if it's an activity that we're going to do with them, or a game or a playtime, like what I'll do is I'll kind of, if I know there's a word that I don't know, I'll look it up really quickly and then try and use it as much as I can. And so a lot of, especially with our daughter, she likes to do like play with her little dolls, or these little people that we have her play with, or her stuffy toys. She likes to do like talking stuff, so I'll I've been trying to figure out, okay, where does she lack in her speaking ability, and I'll try and, or what does she doesn't know how to say or has trouble saying, and I'll kind of imitate that with these little toys. So that's one thing that I'll do is or a couple things that I'll do is I'll look up words if I don't know them, and if they're for that specific activity, then I'll try and use that word as much as I can while we do that activity. And then when she uses her toys and wants to play, like, we just make up different scenarios of what these people are doing, going to the store or whatever.
She's really obsessed with doctors right now. We have a whole doctor kit as well, because obviously the pandemic and all the masks and whatnot.
Yeah, so she does a lot of, like, so we have a little doctor kit that we have, and she checks the temperature and gives a needle and different things like that. So
the stethoscope and their heart, and yeah, she's really into people being sick and going to the hospital or going to the doctor's office, and that's been like a whole thing in itself.
Yeah, she had a phase where she had her little house, and there'd always be a fire, and the fire truck would come, and we'd have to save the person inside. So thinking of words around that, looking up words in that.
Shout out to Rochelle. She has some really good resources that we've been able to get in, to use to help with.
Yeah, so Rochelle Allen has resources, has ideas, and has a YouTube page if you look up her name.
And has hosted immersion events for our family, which have been beautiful and wonderful.
And so we'll talk about our other
later on,
in a later episode, but and maybe one day have them as guests, but on this podcast. So what are other things that you use to...
So storytelling, so TPRS for sure, so total physical response storytelling. I didn't realize that was what I was using for so long, because it was a technique that I had used or learned through different immersion programs I had attended, which I'll get into in a later time. So a lot of the time when I don't know exactly what I want to say, or I don't know exactly how to say it with the proper grammar, I'll end up acting a scenario out a couple of ways for her to understand, or even for my son to understand. So I was talking about a beaver and dragging the log, and I didn't know how to use the word, or I couldn't. I was trying to look for a word for, like, gnaws the tree down and drags it or something like this. I can't really remember. And so there I am, like, acting it out, like, oh, I'm making dough. His arms are good. Gadana. Like, do you have something I can use to pull this log? I think we were watching Lady and the Tramp or whatever. So we were, talking about, something silly like that. But anyways, a lot of the time it's me acting out the scenario to explain, like, a word or a situation that I maybe don't know how to say, like a fluent speaker. Our whole house is labeled, I'll tell you that. We have had word lists up and down, like up, we put them up, and then they've come down, new ones have gone up over the last 5 years. We still have Post-it notes on the walls, masking tape everywhere, word lists in the bathrooms, laundry rooms, everywhere. So that was just, like, one little thing that helps me for, like, constantly seeing words that I need to use in my life every day, that I don't really need to spend time on just studying over and over again. Putting them up on the wall is good enough for me to refer to, and then after 5-6 times I remembered it, or I've stored it in my head.
We also have, like, I have an iPod that I have just the Anishinaabemowin on, and our daughter calls that her phone. So if we're in the car or somewhere, we don't use it a lot, but when she turns that on, there's only Anishinaabemowin on it, different songs and from different resources and stories and stuff, so she can only choose from that. So that's one thing that kind of keeps her in the language. And just seeing videos, like there's videos on Facebook and YouTube, but one of the things is that I noticed is when she sees other children speaking, or even if they're just repeating words and she sees that, it kind of pushes her to use the language. And I think that, like, I know when I talked about how far she would be in English, and I know if she was around other kids, I think, and other speakers speaking to her as well, like I can just imagine how far she would be in the language as well. But yeah, we're still on that journey, I guess, and we'll see where it goes, and we're still kind of thinking about where we're gonna go next in terms of, I guess, schooling. There's different options that we're thinking of, and going to an immersion school or homeschooling or trying to start an immersion school. There's different options that we can try and go with, and it's all it's a challenge, I guess, to look forward to.
Because we're in immersion household, I forget a lot of the time about, teaching her about her introduction and praying with her and stuff, because I'm thinking so much about the language, and so I've been trying to go back more to that, especially when we're outside. And so a lot of the time, to get her to help her know who she is and whatnot, because I don't really know how to navigate that in English, because that's not an English thing, and I don't really know how to navigate it in Anishinaabemowin because I'm just, on this journey myself. So every time we go up to something outside, a tree, or if it's really nice out, or if we see a hawk, we like stop, and if we have salmon, we lay it down, and if we don't, sometimes we just introduce ourselves. And she didn't used to like to do that because she didn't really understand, and I didn't make a game out of it, but I would shout it out, Mshkogaabwid, Giizhigo, Makwendodam, and so she began, saying her spiel the same way, and now it's like kind of our thing. So that's one way, and one thing that's cool about when we go outside, because it's always easier to use it outside because those are our words, right? Not necessarily easier, but everything flows a little bit more, although we don't get it to go outside as much as I would like, just being in the city and being in a pandemic. It makes it hard. Other things that we do in the language. Sometimes we have activity kits like puzzles or Play-Doh that I'll end up just putting a whole word list on and laminating and putting into the pack so that we can just use it when we're pulling that activity out. Well, I was going to say, before we do, did you want to do a little piece in the Anishinaabemowin? I know that people who were interested in this podcast were interested in, are you guys going to do it all in the language? So even though I'm not great, I still think that's what some people want to hear and whatever. And if you wanted to do that, I'd be cool, even though, I don't speak correctly. I make loads of mistakes. If you wanted to just maybe commit to 5 or 10 minutes in the language at the end.
Okay.
I think that would be kind of cool. And if we get better, we get better. And if we don't, or we can move it to the front. It doesn't matter.
We're going to show at the Bashman.
And Windamoying a summary. Wiganish Giizhigo Kidoyan. Yeah. Mage Goals win suenda man wajchigayan bama goding.
Ganabash neon kanutan manda kekiria momentum de Anishinaabem Jubwa Shaganashimia Gishben Anishinaabem Tuadwa Gijansuk Gegwa Anshitken Gegwa
Mage gui kwesta dieng mapi ni gui jamin a gigo. Maybe that would be more helpful to people to hear us go back and forth. Like Wiganish wa mamwe we sin a win winning and so Giizhigo. What's your favorite meal? Ka. What's your favorite meal time or your favorite time of the day with the kids? Wiganish wa mamwe.
Wiganish mamo madagwan naman maging mamo Wendavan.
Get.
Would you what? Gijansuk. Ni Ganabach the Ginew madagandaan Iduko Gwa and so Kajab ni Ndakanunag not a good nung banaz. I got Gishben Mage Bakdewad and so Kajab and so Kajay Balgak Minwenda Kindash.
Gawin dawiji wisene me or Anisha
We do ma.
Gawin dawi ma si ni John suk and so kishep pimsek Godwasu Giizhigo mage Nishwasu Giizhigo mage Name Giizhigo Mshkogaabwid Ntam Giizhigo Ndakina mage gwas Mbagesh ni dupma ni John suk Giizhigo wisnawin namemwendan Bidaben Mizindo Benicia Kuching Minakwe Makdeabo Minawa Kweshkutad Min Mawak Kweshkutad Mawak. I like to visit ni mage
Boachway.
Yeah, ni
Boachway.
namemwenda na Boachway ni John suk ni John suk mi dash Giizhigo Yeah, nasop nakshik wisnawin in the Kinamagay West and nakwek wisnawin at na wisname at namemwen don kashepan sa Giizhigog. And Gridja mission kintam jabwag ki Giizhitaying.
Organish at Mamo Minuendaman Anishinaabemowin was in a gun.
Abatek we edit chigay nung go megwam kababin. Banojim Banojiak Nishinabem is in a gun Zagedawin Bakadekawin. Yeah, Zagedawin's fasting journey. Namemwendan. Gintam make one in the Maka Dendam. Okay, na Papa Nendam. Papa.
No, Nagdawendam.
Yeah, get na Nagdawendam.
Kana batch you Mamo Minuendama Ikindama Dinaganan Binjaba Magak Nayashingming Kinandanish-in-nah-bay-mo-win Swe Misayag Kinabash ni Swe Maginiwan Zanaganan Giizhigo
Opportunity is on a cut. Quaidway. Yeah, Quaidway. Namemwenda Napachigo Native Journal. Zoms on the gut, going the Kensington. Gonna bunch sounding thunder.
So we talked about some of the books that we liked reading and then we like reading to the kids. And there's a limited amount out there. So I wanted to add that we do read to the kids in language too. And even we have English books, we'll translate ourselves in the language. And sometimes if it's a new book, then we get stuck on how to say something. But if we keep reading the same book, like the same English book over, then we're able to translate.
Giba Dagoshinawat Miyage Wagoshuk. That's another one that we read since the beginning of Sabe's pregnancy. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, so we have these. So we'll talk about more about the kind of different books that we have later. But yeah, that's one of the other things that we do with them. So we will read the books that we have in the language that are out there. But then we'll also translate English books. And sometimes we have the words in the book translated, but most of the time it's just the English wording, and we'll just translate as we go. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, after like maybe 6 or 7 episodes, we'll probably do a place for Q&A, I think, so that like when we do let this release it or whatever, that there's a place to like kind of help us, give us feedback on like what people are interested in. And I think maybe next time we'll start in Anishinaabemowin first, and then go into English after, and it might be a good way. So, Chi-Miigwech for being part of the first experience here.
Miigwech. Pamapi.
Pamapi, Kawapan, Lim.